Now, if you watch a lot of true crime, this probably won't shock you, but there are some people who would rather risk spending the rest of their lives in prison instead of simply filing for divorce. Have you ever wondered why? Why does the thought of walking away seem so much worse than the thought of just committing murder? Think about the case of Chris Watts, who we know killed his entire family instead of admitting to an affair. Or Scott Peterson, I don't even like saying these guys' names, but he spun a tangled web of lies, pretending to be a grieving husband while his wife Lacey and their unborn son lay at the bottom of the San Francisco Bay. Even Josh Powell, who couldn't bear the thought of losing control over his wife Susan, made sure she vanished, and later, horrifically, he sealed his own fate along with his children's. These aren't isolated incidents. Again and again, we see spouses who choose violence over a lawyer's office. The psychology behind it is chilling, whether it's narcissism, financial control, or the fear of losing their perfect facade. These killers would rather risk everything than admit their marriage is over. And that brings us back to this case. If you haven't watched part 1, I would highly recommend going back and doing that first so that you get all of the facts, and then you can get caught up and come back here. I'll go ahead and link it in the cards and down below in the description box. And then you can jump right back into this video. When we left off, though, we were talking about grave subsidence. Do you remember this?
I do, and I know what it is now, but why don't you tell them?
I will. So for those of you coming back, you already know, just like Jon does, and the story is very deep. But what wasn't deep enough was apparently this grave that I was mentioning. This grave subsidence, also known as grave sinking. I explained in the last video right before we ended that in cemeteries where graves are dug and left in dirt, the caskets may fall deeper into the earth as air continues to escape and the soil settles over time and the weather takes a toll on the ground. You can see a hole in the shape of the size of a casket. Well, when a body is buried under concrete, the same process happens, but it presents a little differently, especially because in these cases, we're not talking about a casket.
We're talking about a body outside of a casket.
Exactly. And the soil underneath still settles, especially when it's a lot looser in a makeshift grave. This is not, a professional grave digger doing this. As the body decomposes, it releases moisture and gases that weaken the material above it. And over time, as soft tissues liquefy and drain into the soil, the ground starts to shift. Water begins to pool in unnatural places, and the earth practically tells on the person who is hiding something beneath the soil. It creates what I told you in the last video was a cadaver decomposition island. This is a distinctive spot in the earth underneath instead of above the ground, creating a depression as the composition of the soil changes. So in effect, because of the way the body's changing, the earth is coming down. You're going to start to see it on the surface. As the officers looked around that fire pit on Lori's property and the concrete slab that it was sitting on, there was an obvious depression in the cement, and it was the size of a human body. And every time I look at this now, I was even telling you this yesterday, I am so creeped out thinking about it. It's heartbreaking. It's sad. It's scary. It's all of those things combined. And they believed that this wasn't just a body. It was Michael's body, that it could be right there. I took one look at it and it gave me chills, just like the officers. They thought it was really chilling.
And when they saw that, they decided they wanted to conduct a more thorough search.
Exactly, because they saw that distinctive area and they wanted to actually bring out cadaver dogs, not just canines, but they actually told Lori that they wanted some cadaver dogs to sniff around her property, and she wasn't having it.
The investigators think that after the tractor show on November 7th, 2015, Lori killed her husband, and then she hid his body in the duck pond that he had been digging for her.
Yeah, and it was all her plan from the beginning, having this poor man dig his own grave, telling him, oh, come back home. I want to make things work out between us. All the while, she's seeing other men and planning his murder. They were sure of it, but they just needed to get a search warrant and find out. If Michael was under that concrete slab, it would prove this theory. By March 9th of 2018, deputies finally had their chance. Enough probable cause for a search warrant. Now, this was an extensive search. They brought in everyone. Homicide investigators, crime scene technicians, forensic anthropologists, cadaver dogs, ground penetrating radar. There were police vehicles up and down that rural street.
And the media was there documenting all of it.
And as a refresher, I just want to remind you that some of the evidence that led to this warrant was from Travis Filmer and Jeremy Townsend, the two men Lori had been with after Michael. Jeremy had told investigators that the first time he ever went to Lori's house, which was after Michael had vanished, he noticed there was something that looked like blood on one of her pairs of jeans. And these jeans were ones she wore all the time. This was like her favorite pair. And he looked at it and she kind of realized he was looking down at her pants where the blood was. She took them off and then she never wore them again. And he never saw them again.
And Travis told investigators that before he moved in with Lori and her children, Lori told him that Michael wasn't missing. Instead, she said, it's not that he's missing. He's no longer walking this earth.
I mean, why would you say that? And Lori also allegedly told him something terrible happened to Michael and there was a body on the property somewhere. Travis was actually the one who helped Lori pour the concrete for the patio on September 12th of 2016, a little over a year after Michael had been last seen. He even rented out a concrete mixer from Home Depot. And get this, you have to look carefully because I am going to put a picture up. He and Lori drew their initials onto the concrete slab before it dried. And they even had their wedding, I did this in the last video, but doing it in air quotes, wedding just feet away. But later, Travis would retract all of these statements and deny that he said them. I told you, he was in love with Lori and she could do no wrong.
As soon as they let the cadaver dog loose on Lori's property, it immediately started alerting to this dirt mound over and over again.
And this was interesting because it wasn't the slab. It wasn't the line of demarcation. It wasn't the depression inside of the concrete, which was interesting to them.
And that's when they brought out the backhoe and excavator.
And this was quite a scene. There were tents set up to shield helicopters, drones, or planes from flying overhead and maybe seeing something just in case evidence was uncovered. And the ground-penetrating radar machine was brought in, and they pushed that around the perimeter of the land where this canine alerted.
So why this dirt mound?
That's what they were trying to understand because they dug and they found nothing. But they figured a body could have been there at one point. And obviously it was clear that it was because the dog kept alerting there like a body was there, but it had been moved. The obvious place of interest was that slab, so they began to break it apart. Now you'd think if you were innocent, you would be there trying, especially if this was your husband and they're on your land looking for your husband, you're thinking, but it is her land. So already it kind of raised the red flag. But Lori was not cooperating. She sat in her truck in the driveway. So she was kind of watching this unfold on the phone with her lawyer. And she would not talk to the media. She would just like slam her car door and say, talk to my attorney.
As they started digging into that concrete slab, it was total chaos. Neighbors watched as investigators ran around yelling commands, and then suddenly, everything stopped. The ones closest to the dig site just put their heads in their hands. It was obvious that they found something.
And it wasn't long before the sheriff made a public announcement on the news, and they confirmed they had located what looked like a human arm bone just 3 feet below the surface. First, they located a blue tarp, and it was secured with a set of ratchet straps. Inside was a queen-size fitted bedsheet. Well, what was left of the bedsheet anyway, because it had nearly disintegrated by this point because just the outside, you know, the elastic band around the sheet was all that was left. The rest of the sheet was just gone. So it was almost like a big piece of cloth, like a long string. Now, it still had the tag from Kohl's on it, so that's how they knew what it was, because they read it. And beyond the sheet, they found the skeletal remains of a human body, still wearing a pair of underwear, shorts, and black socks. And it was determined that the body had been there for at least a few months to a few years. And all the while, Lori was celebrating birthday parties, toasting marshmallows over a fire pit, and had her pretend wedding right there, as guests were smiling for photos, completely unaware of what was just beneath their feet. And that to me is unreal.
And when the body was found, she just took off in her truck and drove away.
And that really surprised me. But at this point, nothing's really surprising me because I'm like one shock after another. The investigation had just begun. And sadly, everyone already knew that this was going to be Michael. His own father was there as they were removing the remains, and the media even tried to talk to him, which I thought was pretty insensitive. They were like, how do you feel about what's going on? This is his father. He couldn't even speak. He walked away almost in tears, and that was really heartbreaking. And eventually, DNA did confirm it was Michael Shaver buried in the shallow grave. Corporal Corey Anderson was the one that made this initiative happen. He took the chance of asking Lori if he could look around that property back in February when Scott requested that welfare check. If he wouldn't have seen that sunken part of the slab when he did, and even took pictures of it with his phone, he took pictures and video, that's what kicked off this entire search. He knew from that moment a body was under that concrete. I mean, he made the connection. He said he was interviewed later, and he's, done this a very long time. And he said, putting the pieces together, like missing man, wife that's being defensive right away, story's not really matching up. And then it was too much.
Travis was seen walking away from the house, carrying a bunch of stuff, including baby formula. The media swarmed him, trying to get him to say anything, but he just kept walking.
I also noticed it was the same formula that we feed Mazzy. It's like the purple Enfamil Gentilies. But he's doing this because he's gathering all their belongings and getting away from this area. I don't know where they were hiding out, but this is chaos going on right in their backyard. Remember, Lori had just given birth a month or two before this, but later Travis said that he was in total shock when Michael's body was found on that property, and he denied knowing anything about it. He said he had no idea when he was pouring that concrete that Michael was buried there.
But didn't he say that Lori told him that Michael wasn't walking the earth anymore and that something bad happened, and now that there's a body on the property?
Allegedly, yes, but I'm assuming it wasn't written in anybody's notes, and then he retracted all of those statements. So officers and other people said, oh, we heard him say that. But then he's like, well, you didn't write it down. So there's no official recorded statement.
Sounds like hearsay.
Exactly. So let's talk about how Michael died, because that was an official record from the medical examiner. A single gunshot wound to the back of the head from a .38 caliber bullet, which was recovered from his skull. Now, remember who had a .38 caliber? Lori, the pink gun. Manner of death was homicide, and the investigation moved to the inside of the home, where crime scene technicians used Blue Star, which is like luminol, and it activated in the track of the sliding glass door of the home that led from the dining room out to the back patio. Blood had at one point, because it was clean now, pooled in that track and also ran in a drip-like pattern down the outside of the trailer between the home and the porch. Swabs were taken, but it had been a while, and the DNA had degraded to the point where they could not tell if it was male DNA and couldn't include or exclude Michael Shaver.
Investigators were also digging through all of Lori's Facebook posts, her DMs, and texts. Turns out she sent a private message to her sister Alicia from her work laptop on November 11th, 2015. And it said, Michael left yesterday, packed his stuff, and went to the airport.
And that was a few days after he was last seen, and a day before his coworkers received those weird text messages that he wasn't coming back.
A few days later, on Monday, November 16th, Lori sent another message to her sister Alicia. She talked about what she had done over the weekend, November 14th and 15th. She said she did tons of yard work and cleaned up outside.
I'm sure she did, and that's just sickening now that we know what was happening. But of course, this was all circumstantial evidence. But remember how Michael's bank account wasn't used again after the 7th? Well, one of his credit cards was, not in person, but online, on Wish.com. On November 19th and the 23rd, someone purchased women's lingerie and clothing items that were shipped to, guess where?
Lori.
Exactly. Of course they were. She's buying cheap lingerie with her dead husband's credit card and wearing them for her new lovers. That's just gross, and it's heartless. It's disgusting. But again, it's circumstantial. I know people don't like when we say that, but it's true. It's circumstantial. Like, we're connecting the dots, but in a court of law, it's not direct evidence that she put him there. Lori also cashed checks in Michael's name and withdrew money from accounts that she had access to, causing it to be overdrawn.
On April 28th, 2016, Lori posted a picture to Facebook, and in the background, there were at least 14 bags of concrete mix stacked in her pickup truck, and the caption said, "Cement, it's going around the fire pit I built."
It's just so obvious to me that these are like digital alibis, which we put in our last thumbnail, but it's like she's creating this digital trail of like, oh, look, it's going to be a great summer. I'm creating a fire pit. Oh, look, cement. Like, that's so odd. Like, who does that? I understand household projects, but I really think that's too obvious.
I mean, if you really thought you were getting away with having a body buried in your backyard, then having concrete on your Facebook post saying, hey, it's going to be a great summer, we're going to do all this stuff,
Or if you were innocent, it wouldn't be weird
Exactly.
because we show what we're doing to our house and it's not a big deal. It's like, I didn't bury somebody underneath our new bathroom.
Exactly.
But I think we're looking at it in hindsight. We're looking back and going like, that's so strange. But it wasn't until months later when Travis was in the picture that they actually laid that concrete. So yes, she had it in the picture in the back of her pickup truck, but she never really did anything with it until later. There were actual receipts from Lowe's and Home Depot that showed Travis and Lori purchased 42 bags of cement and a mixer. And when questioned about it, Travis admitted that he saw a hole dug in the backyard in the summer of 2016 when he went to Lori's house. He said it was about 3 to 4 feet deep. And at the time, he thought it was kind of odd that the dirt pile on the edge of the property that Lori said came from that hole was much too big, meaning another spot somewhere else had been dug. And remember where the dog alerted? That's what we're talking about.
So the theory was that Lori buried Michael in the original spot until she could get help laying the concrete slab.
Exactly. And then she moved his body, then filled in that hole for the duck pond and had Travis help cover it up. Now, this is just a theory that investigators were going with. But 3 days after Michael's body was discovered, something pops up in the mail. It was a photograph of Michael. It was sent from Orlando to Lori's house with a message. Tell the kids I love them. See you soon, Mike. Now, this was after they dug up the skeletal remains, but before they were able to officially ID them. But now they know Michael did not send that postcard. I mean, it's kind of obvious. And just like he didn't send any of those weird text messages or DMs, they traced all of that, all Michael's messages back to Lori's IP address. Yep. Even the messages sent to Jeremy's wife, Vanessa. Lori was posing as Michael, as you probably guessed by now.
Now, detectives weren't just looking for a possible murder. They were looking at a calculated cover-up. They didn't think Lori had just killed her husband. She tried to rewrite history, impersonating him online, spinning lies, and manipulating people long after he was gone.
And it's crazy to think that Vanessa had no clue that she was actually not talking to Michael the whole time. She was talking to his crazy wife. The Facebook account, the messages, it all seemed genuine at the time. But in reality, Lori had gone full-on cyberstalker mode, trying to get Vanessa to leave her husband, even saying that she got pregnant with his baby. We'll circle back to all the pregnancy stuff in a moment. But those flowers that Vanessa received, the ones with that incredibly creepy note, had been paid for from Lori Shaver's bank account. Doesn't she know that there's such thing as a paper trail? A digital trail, that, or she's like very stupid or full of herself so much that she thought she was smarter than everyone else, including the law. But bear in mind, we're telling you all of this after the fact, but the evidence took a while to collect and analyze. It took them about 18 months before Lori was actually arrested.
She was finally taken into custody on September 16th of 2020 and charged with second-degree murder. But because of the pandemic, she was let out on bail while waiting for trial, a trial that wouldn't even begin until September 9th, 2024.
I know, it just happened like not too long ago. Travis said he was shocked that she was arrested. And I swear I want to put in that like meme that's like, shocked? You were shocked? Like, really? It had been 2 years from the time Michael's body was found, so maybe he got used to thinking she got away with it. But actually, he didn't think they had enough evidence to prove that Lori killed Michael, and Travis didn't believe she did. She sold the pink gun, so there wasn't a murder weapon, and there wasn't enough blood or DNA evidence inside the house to show that he'd actually been killed there. No fingerprints or forensic evidence linking Lori directly to the crime. And during the time she's out on bail, she did get a divorce from her now dead husband and legally married Travis on December 31st of 2020, the same date that they had their commitment ceremony back in 2016. She also had another child with Travis, a little boy named Samuel, in addition to their little girl Arlen, who was born back in January of 2018, right before this investigation began. And before I forget, I wanted to talk about something. Remember in the beginning, I talked about how Travis had a little bit of a spotty past, and I mentioned some of his previous charges, and I included one for strangulation, domestic in nature. That is on his records. He was arrested for that. And it happened in 2022. So it happened while she was out on bail. And since it was domestic, I mean, could it have been a brother? Sure. Could have been his brother. But we know he put his hands around somebody's neck. I just wanted to point that out because I wanted to circle back to it and not forget. But could it have been him and Lori getting in a fight? We don't know. But Lori put out a very strange, probably the strangest video I've ever seen related to a crime like this. It was posted to Lori's YouTube channel on March 2nd of 2021. It's titled, "I'm Innocent. Support I'm Innocent." And it had a link to her PayPal. That was the title. I kid you not. This was a fundraiser, and she's sitting on a dock in the video with her defense attorney. It opens with some very cheesy music that we can't play because we'll probably get copyright strikes for it. So we'll mute that. The sun is setting in the distance over the lake. There's images of the water. It's just very strange with what you're about to see. Like, it doesn't correlate. It looks like she's doing a vlog of maybe like a camping trip or something. And then boom, she's there with her attorney sitting on the dock. It's like, who produced that video and thought that was a good idea? No. We're going to play a few clips for you and summarize it as well. So hold on to your heads. First, her attorney, Jeffrey Wiggs, he outlines the serious charges against Lori and talks about the toxic marriage that she had with Michael, including the physical mistreatment that she endured, how Michael had a restraining order against him, the children were in danger, and he made it look like Michael was just this horrific monster. Then he goes into the story about a mystery man who they don't name in this video, but from the narrative, we can infer that this is Jeremy Townsend, and how he witnessed bruises on Lori's neck when they began seeing one another. They met in September of 2015, 2 months prior to Michael disappearing.
Lori's attorney says this mystery man that we know as Jeremy confronted Lori, telling her that he was in special forces, had protected President Bush, and had a special ability to protect her from Michael Shaver. Now let's listen to that.
And we don't know to this day, or to some extent, we'll find out though. But he proclaimed he had been in the special forces, he had been appointed to protect President Bush, and that he had the special ability to protect Lori from Michael Shaver. He even advised Lori that he had the ability and the knowledge and the special skills to kill somebody, and that nobody else would ever see it, know it, or be able to pin it on him in any fashion. Michael being out of the house, Lori had a relationship with this same individual. The same individual became close to Lori, and during their relationship, Michael was gone. Michael was out of the house. He had disappeared through some means of which we suspect we have the answer to. Anyway, this same individual, this mystery man, advised Lori that she needed to create a sitting patio in her backyard. Told her how much concrete she would need, told her where to put it, and even assisted her in purchasing the concrete. Well, later these two individuals broke up. This individual went back to his first wife, and later on, Lori began to date somebody else. Well, they had concrete sitting there, and her and this individual, who she's now married to, Travis, built this patio. Unbeknownst to Lori, underneath the patio laid Michael Shaver. Later in time, law enforcement approached her, having received some word or advice or suspicion that a crime had been committed.
So she is blaming all of this on Jeremy, the guy who rejected her and went back to his wife after he realized he was sleeping with a psycho. And now she's saying Jeremy said he could take care of Michael, and then he just vanished. And he told her to make a patio. Like, now make a patio, wink, wink. I mean, it's kind of a far-fetched story if you ask me. And that he bought her the concrete and then just broke up with her. So you mean to tell me that she wants us to believe that this man she met at the park that's cheating on his wife with her is going to kill someone for her and then also break up with her? And there's also proof that Lori and Travis bought more concrete. And sure, there was some concrete already there, but when they built the fire pit, they bought even more. Yet unbeknownst to Lori, Michael was buried under there. That's what she wants you to believe. How convenient. So let's apply Occam's razor here. It's the simplest explanation is always the best one.
Her attorney goes on to argue that there's no forensic evidence linking Lori to the crime. They even gave investigators Jeremy's name as the person they believe killed Michael, but instead of following that lead, law enforcement just arrested Lori because she was closest to where the body was found. And on top of that, they supposedly got a search warrant by falsifying a probable cause affidavit.
This is what the attorney's saying.
Right.
Like, this isn't what is really going on. He's like, they didn't even research Jeremy. Like, we gave him that name, but instead they just arrested Lori because the body was found on her property. I think there was more to it than that. And this is what I explained earlier, that initially investigators said that Travis told them Lori made the statement that Michael was no longer living. He was no longer walking the earth. Her defense attorney said that he asked Travis all about this. And Travis even signed an affidavit saying he never said that. I actually think he slipped up. I really do. I think he slipped up and then he regretted it afterward. And now he's trying to circle back and say he never said anything. Her attorney tried to get some pity from the viewers, saying she's a mother of 4 with no one to turn to for financial help to finance her litigation. And then I was surprised because Lori's just been sitting there the whole time with her like hair blown in the wind. And she's like, but she finally spoke. So let's play that part for you.
My name is Lori Filmer, also known as Lori Shaver, and as my attorney, Mr. Wiggs, has just stated, he is representing me for the charges of second-degree murder of my ex-husband, Michael Shaver. I'm coming before you guys today just to let you know that we have our suspicions, but I don't know why I've been targeted, why I've been set up, or charged with this heinous crime. I am not guilty.
I don't want to laugh in these videos, but sometimes things are so absurd that the natural reaction is to laugh because she doesn't know why she's being targeted, that she's being set up and charged with what?
Heinous crime.
I got to say that this is the most bizarre defense strategy that I have ever seen, or at least in a while. But let's keep going.
And anybody that knows me knows that my life is my children. I am a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a neighbor, I'm a servant of God, I'm a wife, and I am a devoted mother of 4. My life is my children. The well-being of my children has and always will be my top priority. And that is the reason that I would never cause any harm to the father of my children. And I know that there's people out there that are trying to paint this picture of me, but that's not me. I'm loving, I'm caring, I have a servitude heart. I don't judge people. I accept all, and I always try to see the good in everybody. And right now, I am up against something that I would have never imagined possible. And so today I'm coming to you, my family and I are begging you, asking for your assistance to help prove my innocence in this case. Without you, we don't have the financial means to pay for my attorney's fees. But I can tell you that I am not guilty. I had nothing to do with the murder of Michael Shaver, nor did I have any knowledge of his body being buried underwear. We were building a gathering place, a conversational fire pit area for our family and friends to spend time together at.
No, I'm sure she does love her children. She said she's loving, she's caring. She always tries to see the good in everybody. And maybe she is all of those things. You know, you can be all those things, but you could also be a liar. So if she's a liar, we know she is, why believe any of this? She pretended to be Michael for 2 years. Why? That doesn't make sense. And that means she had to have known that someone killed Michael, even if it wasn't her. Because why would you keep perpetuating this lie that he's alive, right? Why take over his identity if she didn't know he was dead? So even right there, that's a crime. She's impersonating somebody. She's hiding the fact he's dead. She's hiding a crime. But she's sitting there insisting that she's innocent and begging for help financially to fund her defense to prove that she's innocent. I don't know who, if anyone, did donate to this cause, but Lori was able to retain Mr. Wiggs as her attorney, and they went to trial just a few months ago in September of 2024.
The prosecution wasted no time in their opening statements. They laid out a case of premeditated murder, painting Lori as a cold, calculated killer who shot Michael, buried him under concrete, and then spent years pretending he was still alive. They focused heavily on the Facebook messages, arguing that Lori used social media to mislead family and friends, stringing them along with fake updates from Michael's accounts to cover her tracks.
But Lori's defense attorney went in a completely different direction. He didn't deny that Michael was dead. He didn't deny that Lori had pretended to be Michael online. Instead, he painted her as a victim, a woman trapped in a terrible marriage who had no choice but to let her boyfriend Jeremy kill Michael to protect her family. According to this new story, Lori never pulled the trigger. Her boyfriend did. If you think that sounds like a lot, buckle up, because it gets even crazier. Because we kind of already knew this defense was coming from seeing that weird video. But now, in their opening statement, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the defense is painting an entirely different picture, and a very disturbing one, I might add, of what happened to Michael.
He told the jury that Michael attacked Lori, and that her daughter Isabel, who was only 7 years old at the time, saw it happening, so she ran to get a gun and shot at her own father in self-defense of her mother.
There's no other words but wow. Like, your jaw kind of just drops. She's blaming this murder on her own child. Just think about that. Let that sink in. How much does she love her children? Because she said that she did. But I think if you really loved your child, you would never... Well, first of all, you wouldn't kill their father in front of them, because that's insinuating that that's what's happening here, right? But no, not just that. She's killing her father. She's putting this on a 7-year-old child.
And there's more. Her defense said that Isabel wasn't even sure if she had actually hit Michael, and she hadn't.
Oh, so here they are pulling back because they're like, oh, we don't want to blame this murder on a 7-year-old. So now she hadn't hit him. She tried to save her mom.
And he was still a threat. And at that exact moment, Jeremy Townsend, Lori's boyfriend at that time, walked into the house. He already knew Michael was dangerous because Lori had told him so. He saw what was happening, grabbed the gun from Isabel, and he fired a second shot, the fatal shot, into the back of Michael's head.
I am going to call major bullshit. But I see what they did there. They try to get a little creative. Little Isabel is not tall enough to have made that shot straight to the back of Michael's head. So they also need to make that make sense. Isabel was the scapegoat. Her mother manipulated her to say that it was her because she's a minor and she wouldn't go to prison. And she would have had a valid self-defense claim if she had truly believed that her father was going to kill her mother. So according to the defense, Jeremy was obsessed with Lori. He was stalking her on Facebook, following her around town, and he wanted to be her hero and take care of all of her problems, get her husband out of the way so he could be with her. And in that moment that he shot Michael, Lori said he turned to her and he told her she needed to take the kids and leave. And if she ever mentioned this to anyone, he would kill them. She claimed that she did as she was told. And when she returned home, Michael's body was gone and the pond on their property was filled in with dirt. I mean, I don't know. Do juries actually fall for this? I'm wondering, if I was sitting on a jury and I was listening to this, wouldn't I be like, whoosh, like my head would be like, my head would be spinning.
Yeah, I think that juries do.
They do fall for it.
Well, apparently, look at Casey Anthony.
Or O.J. Simpson. But you know what? It's all about what's let in and what the jury sees. And apparently, Lori had planned on providing a statement from a former police officer, so someone that has a little bit of authority. But the only problem with this is that he was no longer a police officer. He was now like a contractor, and he employed her husband, Travis. So there's a little bit of a weird scenario going on.
He was supposed to testify that Isabel had come to him at a family gathering and admitted to shooting her father in the head to save her mother's life. And later, Isabel even admitted to this in a deposition.
Right, but Lori could have told her to say that. I mean, this is an impressionable child. She's like, you don't want mommy to go to prison. You know how bad daddy was. Like,
right.
That's sick.
And with that, the judge blocked this information from being presented in court.
Yeah, probably because it was all too strategic. First, it neutralized Jeremy Townsend's testimony by making him look like an accomplice with something to hide. And second, it distanced Lori from any direct involvement, allowing her to portray herself as just another victim in this deadly chain of events. But there was one central unanswered question. was Lori really willing to let her own daughter believe that she had killed her father? And I kept thinking, that poor child, she must have been so brainwashed.
I mean, that by itself should be a crime.
It really should, because children are so innocent and they don't know anything and they believe their parents. They trust their parents. Now, this trial only lasted 4 days, kicking off with Frank Merritt, Michael's coworker, who testified about the last time anyone saw Michael alive. He and another coworker described how Michael would frequently come to work with cuts and bruises, injuries that he said were caused by Lori. They painted a picture of Michael as a mild-mannered guy who just wanted to keep the peace and keep his family together. They said he forgave Lori over and over again for both her affairs and her violent outbursts.
Then came the testimony from Michael's friends and family who had received these bizarre, robotic messages from his Facebook account. But here's the thing, Lori was still denying it. She wanted the jury to believe that someone had used her Wi-Fi and was impersonating Michael without her even knowing.
I mean, come on. She's very unlucky, right? Someone just like stealing her Wi-Fi from the street, pretending like those pesky little Wi-Fi stealers.
And then Robert Mercado took the stand. He was the guy that Lori originally claimed had picked Michael up in a black SUV and driven him to Georgia. But in court, Robert completely denied it, and then he dropped a bombshell. He had actually witnessed violence between Lori and Michael before, but it was always Lori who turned violent. He even recounted a time when Lori pulled a gun on Michael, and then he had to step in between them until she finally calmed down and put the gun away.
That's scary. And your friend's willing to step in the middle and say, like, do not shoot. And then came Travis Filmer, Lori's current husband, and the man she had 2 children with. Travis's answers on the stand were much different than the ones he gave when he was first questioned by police many years ago. Maybe it was out of fear of being charged as an accessory after the fact, or perhaps it was just self-preservation. But he was a lot more forthcoming back then. But 6 months later, sitting in this courtroom, Travis was entirely on Lori's side. His testimony wasn't that clear, and it seemed like he was carefully choosing his words to protect her, even making sure that they called her Lori Filmer, not Shaver. And that was true. You know, I mean, she's now married, but maybe she hadn't legally changed her name, because I still haven't changed my last name to yours. Months later, we're not going to talk about that. But yes, he does correct them and say, when they said Lori Shaver, he's like, Mrs. Filmer. He was already getting a little defensive there. But what the prosecution focused on was him being a liar too. And the proof was the fake wedding ceremony. He said, oh, no, we never told anyone that it was a wedding. That was merely assumed. And I was like, yeah, right. But he also denied that Lori ever told him she was already divorced. That was until he was reminded of his previous deposition, where he had said the exact opposite. So let's listen.
At that commitment ceremony that you referenced in December of 2016, what was Lori wearing?
A white dress.
And did someone escort her to where you were?
Yes, I'm trying to remember who that was.
Was it your grandfather?
Yes, sir, it was.
Was there basically some sort of official there doing the proceeding?
Correct.
For anyone looking at this would look like a wedding.
100%.
And had you represented to everyone that you were getting married at that time?
No.
Okay. So no one thought that this was a wedding?
No.
Travis swore repeatedly that he told everyone it was just a commitment ceremony, but the idea that the wedding guests didn't think they were attending a real marriage is pretty ridiculous. We've already seen that this wasn't some, like casual event. I mean, they like hung little cowboy hats on the fence. They had the white drape. She was wearing a full-on wedding dress with a veil. Also, everyone there believed that Lori was divorced because that's exactly what she told them. So why not make it official? The only real reason to keep it hidden was if Travis knew that Lori couldn't legally get married because she was never legally divorced.
To the husband that she shot in the back of the head.
Exactly. It's sick. And based on how Michael was found, wearing nothing but underwear, socks, and shorts, the same thing he often wore to bed, there was a real good chance that he was killed in his sleep. That would most definitely make a straight shot in the back of his head. And he wouldn't be moving, so he would be an easy target.
Not only was their wedding completely fake, but Travis was also trying to claim that he and Lori had never even talked about the fact that Michael's body was found buried in their backyard, right under the exact spot where they had gotten married 2 years earlier.
Exactly. They want you to believe as a married couple, even if they weren't married and they were two best friends, let's say, but they want you to believe they never had that discussion? Really?
In 2018, law enforcement responds to your home, and eventually skeletal remains are found in your backyard. You remember that?
I do.
And at that time, did you ask Miss Shaver how that body got back?
I did not.
So this person that you were in this committed relationship with, that had told you that her husband had just left, just had no contact with the kids, there's a body found in the backyard, and you don't ask her a single question.
That's not exactly what happened. Lori called me on the day that the detective showed up at the house. I was at work. I had just gotten off work, and she called me sobbing, crying, and I asked her what was wrong. She proceeded to tell me that detectives had shown up at the house and they were asking about Michael. She then told me that they had left. I told her I will be home shortly. I worked real close to where we were living, and I got home, walked in the house. As soon as I walked in the house, a detective knocked on the door. He proceeded to ask me if I knew anything about Michael. I said no, I've never met him. I couldn't even tell you what he looks like if you showed me a picture. And which detectives did show me a picture. I was like, okay. They just told me we'll be in touch, and that was that. I walked back in the house. I told Lori, I said, it looks like something serious is going on. You need to get an attorney.
But specifically, you did not ask her anything about the fact that that body was found in the backyard.
Correct.
It's completely ridiculous to think that they never talked about the fact that her missing husband was buried right under their wedding ark. I mean, it never came up, but Travis was a hostile witness through and through, doing everything he could to protect his now legally married wife. He changed his testimony, twisted his words, and flat out lied for this woman. Anything to keep Lori from going down, even if it meant making himself look just as guilty.
Did you ever make the statement, it is not that he is, the statement relaying from Miss Shaver, that it is not that he is missing, it is that he is no longer walking the face of this earth? Have you ever made that statement to law enforcement?
Thank you for bringing that up, because there's a point of clarification. I understand what
Please don't argue. Please answer the question.
Yes, sir. I did not make that statement.
Okay. You never made that statement to law?
Not exactly as you're saying it, no.
Did you ever make that statement to Robert Proper?
Not as you're saying it, no.
And who is Robert Proper?
He's somebody that I have done work for.
Is he a friend of yours?
No, sir.
Have you known him for a long time?
I have known of him for a long time.
You have no issues with him, though?
I do not.
You are now officially married to Miss Shaver, correct? Correct. When did that occur?
2020.
Lori thought she found the perfect loophole: marriage, possibly banking on marital privilege to keep Travis from testifying against her. But the law had other plans. In Florida, spousal privileges only cover things said after the marriage, meaning anything Lori told Travis before they tied the knot in 2020 was fair game. But let's be honest, if Lori told anyone what really happened to Michael, it was Travis. And prosecutors knew that. And they put him on the stand, and his performance was a disaster. The jury could see right through his contradictions and his obvious lies, making his testimony completely unbelievable and unreliable.
Travis told the jury that he had 2 kids with Lori, one born in 2018 and the other in 2020, which gave him every reason to lie for her. He wanted his children to have their mother and for Lori to walk free. He also admitted that his relationship with his own family had changed drastically since 2018. Based on everything that unfolded in court, it was pretty clear that Travis's family wasn't exactly part of Lori's fan club.
On cross-examination, Travis claimed that the only reason he ever spoke to law enforcement was because they threatened him. He said they warned him that if he didn't cooperate, he would feel the full force of the United States government against him. He also admitted that during that conversation, he told officers that he didn't believe this was just a welfare check, and then he had a bad feeling that Michael might not be alive anymore. I mean, that's pretty significant. And that's a pretty big contradiction from like what he's saying in court and back then. Travis told law enforcement that if there was anywhere on the property worth checking, it was the large mound of dirt. He said to them, like we had told you, that it was too big to have come from a 2 to 3 foot hole. So he's sitting there giving them that information. I don't think cops are going to lie about that. When the investigators' conversation turned to the concrete slab and how suspicious that area looked, Travis played dumb. He said, "Oh, I never noticed anything suspicious in that area." Really? Because I noticed it right away. And so did these cops. It's like, what could be there?
Yeah.
Travis also tried to downplay why they poured the patio around the fire pit, claiming it wasn't for a fake wedding ceremony, but it was for Isabel's birthday party in September of 2016. Apparently, poor Isabel is getting blamed for quite a lot of things in this trial.
Then came Travis's twin brother, Austin, who testified for the prosecution. He had been present for some of Travis's early conversations with law enforcement, which likely gave prosecutors even more ammo to point out all the inconsistencies in Travis's testimony. Let's listen.
Were you ever present when Travis was talking to detectives about things Lori had said about the body underneath that slab?
Yes, sir, I was.
And what did you hear him say to the detectives about her husband and the body being under that slab? Objection. Hearsay.
Sidebar, please.
What did you hear your brother say to the detectives about that?
So the conversation from the detectives was a conversation that my brother had with another gentleman, and they asked him details of Michael's whereabouts, if he's known anything about their whereabouts. And his reply was something along the lines of, he's no longer walking the earth.
Now, since Lori became involved with your brother, has your relationship with him changed?
Extremely.
And how so?
For the negative.
And do you have as much contact with him?
Not nearly as much as we used to.
Are you able to visit him as much?
No, I cannot go over there.
And has there ever been a time that you received text messages from your brother that you thought were unusual?
Yes, sir.
And why do they seem unusual to you?
I know the language that my brother and I use when we're speaking to each other. We say things like bro and dude. I have received texts where that language was completely changed. It was more of a direct language than anything. Yeah.
And have you ever asked him about those messages and whether or not he sent them?
Yes, sir.
And what did he tell you about that?
He told me it was not him and that I was blocked on his phone.
Has he ever made any statements about Lori making those texts to you?
He has told me that she blocked me on his phone, yes.
And this is what you were saying. Their family is definitely not a fan of Lori, but old habits die hard with her. She controlled Michael's communication with his family when he was alive, and after she killed him, she did the same thing with Travis and his twin brother. It's not hard to imagine how tough it must have been for Travis's family, knowing he was standing by Lori even after her husband's body was found buried in their backyard. Remember Wilma Nicholas? She was Michael and Lori's neighbor. Well, she told the jury she remembered the concrete patio being installed in 2 phases, and this was interesting. The first layer, she said, was poured in the spring of 2016, just a few months after Michael disappeared. Now, this correlated with the Facebook post Lori made about the fire pit that showed the first set of concrete bags. Wilma said the second section was added in the summer after Travis moved in. She even remembered that they launched fireworks in that exact spot in July of 2016, long before Isabel's birthday and months before their so-called wedding later that year. That's interesting. So I wonder why they added even more concrete in September. Was it because the grave was sinking? That's what I think. It's Florida. It's humid. It's warm. It's bound to happen. So you also might be wondering about the murder weapon. And we told you that 38 caliber gun, the pink one, had been sold. Well, that person that it was sold to came forward after he saw the news, and he was able to give that pink 38 caliber gun to law enforcement. And a firearms examiner analyzed the bullet recovered from Michael's skull so that she could compare it to this gun. But unfortunately, because of decomposition, the bullet had basically fused inside. so she could not make a determination about whether this was the murder weapon. But that really wasn't in question because Lori admitted that a gun from her home was used in the alleged attack, the way that she's portraying it.
Then Jeremy Townsend himself took the stand, the man accused of firing that bullet into Michael's head. He repeated what we already knew, how he met Lori, how she became obsessive,
how she got a tattoo of his nickname on her lady parts.
Yes, all that and more. He told the jury all about how his wife got a number of DMs from Michael's profile and about the flowers.
But on cross-examination, the defense really tried to make him look bad. A cheater. Leading Lori on, not making up his mind whether he wanted her or his wife, even getting Lori pregnant. But of course, he denied all that being true. But according to his own account, they were still sleeping together before April 12th of 2016 when those flowers were delivered. But let's listen.
And so you stated that you go over to Lori's about 1 to 3 times a week, correct?
Correct.
And what time would that be?
11 to 12.
Okay. Never any earlier, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you went over there more than 1 or 3 times a week, correct?
No.
In fact, you got Lori pregnant, did you not?
No.
You stated that you never spent the night there, correct?
Correct.
So, if anybody were to testify they saw you spending the night there, you know where that may be coming from? Somebody look like you know?
I would not know who would say I'd stayed the night there because I never stayed the night there.
After the prosecution rested their case, the defense called their star witness, Isabel Shaver, now 15 years old. She was testifying about events that happened when she was only 7. She started her testimony by insisting that no one had pressured her to be there and confirmed that she understood the legal rights that she would have to waive in order to testify. The courtroom was so silent. I mean, this was a really big deal. And she sat there and recounted what happened the day her father was killed. So brace yourselves.
Lori Shaver's my mother. Me and her are very close. We've always been very close. We do everything together. I don't know, she's like my best friend and a mom in one.
By describing her mom as her best friend, it does raise serious psychological red flags. In cases like this, when a parent and child blur the lines between authority and friendship, it can often signify manipulation, coercion, and misplaced loyalty, especially when the parent is the prime suspect of a murder case of the other parent.
It becomes even more concerning when that child is about to take the stand, lie, and take the blame. When a child is raised to see a parent as their best friend, they might ignore warning signs, cover up inconsistencies, or even help hide the truth, all in the name of love, loyalty, and protecting their mother.
And that's actually really heartbreaking, and it does happen all the time. One of the most striking things about Isabel's testimony is just how detailed and vivid her memory was. This was not just 10 years later, but over a decade after she supposedly witnessed a very traumatic event. And if true, that would have likely resulted in PTSD. As she testified, she went from being a confused young child allegedly involved in a violent incident to a poised teenager with a crystal clear recollection of that particular day. Her testimony doesn't just seem unlikely, it seems extremely rehearsed. That's why it was so crystal clear. Like, you don't usually have a vivid memory. I mean, you could because it's traumatic, but if it was a 7-year-old,
Super rehearsed.
I mean, you would have to have heard that story over and over again. That's how we remember things from our past.
Or you're so traumatized that you replay it over and over again as you remember it.
Could be, but you know what they say. Your memory doesn't get better over time.
What was your relationship like with Michael Shaver?
We didn't really have much of a relationship. He wasn't very present. He worked at night, and so he slept all day during the day, and anytime he was home, we weren't really allowed outside of our rooms. We didn't have a relationship, really. He really wasn't a father to me.
Was the atmosphere calm? How would you describe the household?
It was very combative. It was very tense. There was a lot of tension constantly. It's not calm. It was the complete opposite of calm. Nobody whenever he was home, it was just, I mean, it was scary. It was like I don't know, we were just stuck in our rooms all day, and then like whenever we weren't, it was just, he was very aggressive, and we didn't have that type of relationship. No, it wasn't a calm household.
Isabel's description of a chaotic household lines up with what the neighbor Wilma Nicholas testified to, regular fighting and screaming coming from the Shaver home. However, friends and family paint a different picture of Michael's relationship with his kids. They described him as extremely close with them. And according to friends and coworkers, the only reason he kept trying to make his marriage work was because of his children.
Real question is whether Isabel's versions of events truly reflect what life was like in that home, or if it's the result of years of parental alienation by Lori.
But let's talk about Michael, your father. Do you know anything about the death of your father?
I do.
Do you know anything about how your father died?
I do.
Could you tell the jury?
So, it was a school day, and I'm sorry, and
First, let's relax, go slow, make sure the jury understands the events, okay?
Okay. It was a school morning. Me and my brother were getting ready for school. He hadn't been at the house for a while. He was kicked out and moved, and me and my brother were in separate rooms. We had pretty much been ready for school. I was eating my breakfast and I was watching TV. We had these like little plastic tables in our rooms, and I was watching TV and I heard arguing. Initially I thought it was the TV, and then I was like, no, that's not the TV. So my room, it was my room, and then it had a bathroom and then a spare room. And so they all connected to each other, like through the bathroom. It was almost like a little like pathway. And so I heard, the fighting and the yelling, and it escalated. So when I was little, I would go through there to like sneak around. And I opened the spare room door, and in front of the spare room door was the dining room. And in front of the dining room, there was a glass door, like a sliding glass door. So I opened the door to the spare room, and I stood there, and I saw my father, and he wasn't supposed to be there. And my mom and my father were fighting, and my mom went to leave the argument, leave the porch. They were out on the porch, and he pulled her by the arm, and he pulled her into her lap onto one of the porch chairs, and he held her there, and then she was like, we can work things out, like we'll figure this out, it'll be different. And he was like, no, there's no next time, there's no figuring it out. And he pushed her onto the ground. And he started kicking her in the stomach and in the back. And then he took his other foot and he put it on the side of her face. And she was screaming, and he was like saying there's not going to be another time, and that he was going to kill her at this time. And I heard my mom screaming for help, obviously, and then he put his foot on the side of her face and pushed it into the ground, and I didn't hear her anymore. And I'm sorry. And so I went to my mom's room, and I went at her end table, and I grabbed her gun, and I went back out, and I went to the door. The door was already open, and he had my mom on the ground still holding her to the ground, still kicking her, and I shot him, and nothing happened. He didn't fall. Nothing happened. And then Jeremy.
Let me stop you a little bit as well. Okay, you say nothing happened. Was he standing or sitting?
He was sitting in the chair.
He was sitting in the chair?
His
foot on your mom's head?
Right.
You shot him. Do you know exactly who you shot him, or?
I'm not exactly sure. No.
Okay. Did you shoot him from the rear region, or Where do you think you shot?
I was aiming towards his head, but I'm not sure where the bullet went.
Okay. And what happened after you fired the gun?
He was just sitting there. I mean, he wasn't moving. Nothing happened. There was no blood. There was no nothing. And then,
Let me stop you there. Okay. Let me interject here and there, if I may.
Okay.
Did you feel when you fired that shot that that had to be done or he would have killed your mother?
Yes.
Firm on that?
I'm firm on that.
Was he using that type of force in your mind?
Yes.
It was necessary?
Yes.
Okay. What happened after you shot him? Or you believe you shot him?
Afterwards, Jeremy came, and
How long?
it was right after it happened. Like, I hadn't even had a chance to walk away, move, nothing yet. And, he came in, and he took the gun from me, and then he shot him again. And that's when he fell to the ground. And, my mom had crawled away. He fell to the ground. Jeremy shot him. He told my mom to take us out of the house, take us to school, and that we needed to leave. We are not to tell anybody. We can't tell nobody. We can't call the cops. We can't say anything, or else he was going to do the same thing to me and my brother. And he was going to, hurt us too. So we went to school.
Well, that was an emotional, detailed account of the last morning of her father's life.
And my jaw was on the floor when I first heard that. I felt that little girl's pain. I think it's sad and it's terrible, but I kept thinking, could it be true? And I thought about it again and again. Could there be a world where this is some kind of combination of the truth and lies? Could there have been incidents of physical altercations? Could these incidents of physical altercations really been a part of Lori and Michael's relationship? Sure. That could be true. Could she be misremembering and even overlapping occurrences? Yes, because by April of 2016, Jeremy was no longer in the picture. This was May. Remember I told you the flowers were sent and all that, and I was trying to show you that Jeremy himself said, yeah, we were sleeping together before that, but this was May. And yet Isabel is saying that Jeremy just came right through the door. Either this was back in 2015 in November, and maybe there was a fight between Michael and Lori, and maybe she did go grab her mother's gun and take a shot. Maybe Lori convinced her to do that prior to this by manipulating her. She could have said, listen, oh my gosh, I'm really scared. If anything ever happens, go and grab my gun. Because we know that both of these parents had firearms that they did pull out in front of their children on past occasions. But maybe in this instance, instead of Isabel actually pulling the trigger, she handed that gun to her mother and she took the final shot. But she made this poor little girl believe something different or convince her to lie. I mean, that's all the credit I think I can lend to this particular narrative. The part about Jeremy taking the gun, what do you think? Do you think he just barged in after they hadn't even been together for a while? He just happened to stop by that morning?
Sounds way too far-fetched and kind of convenient.
It does, doesn't it? If the timeline is off, and it really happened back in November of 2015 after Jeremy came into the picture, and she convinced him that Michael was dangerous, maybe. Like if they were genuinely seeing each other and she's like, my husband's dangerous, he could hurt me. But Jeremy said he never came over there in the mornings.
Sure, it's possible. I don't think it's likely, though.
His wife worked at the school that the children attended. So he's like, no, I didn't go in the mornings. I dropped my kid off in the mornings. I went to Lori's later. I was at her house while the kids were in school, not before, because this would have happened before they went to school in the morning. So wouldn't that mean his child would be with him? I don't know. It's very confusing. Maybe the mom, who's the teacher, took the child and Jeremy could have been there. We would like to hear your thoughts in the comments because this is what we always do. We're trying to justify and see it both ways, but possible? Yes.
Likely?
No. Because here's why. Why would Jeremy threaten to kill Lori and her children if they went to the cops? Wouldn't it be self-defense if Lori was truly being harmed? That's why I just cannot get on board with this narrative. Isabel told the jury that when she got home from school that day, she saw Jeremy in their house fixing the door. she never saw him there again. So after he supposedly killed her father, he just exits the relationship. He does this huge favor for his girlfriend that he never speaks to again.
Which sounds odd. Like, why do such a huge favor for your girlfriend, then break up?
And that's why it just does not make sense.
Then she said people saw him later stalking her mom, driving by their house, spotting them in traffic and yelling at them, even following them to a local grocery store. It got so bad that they had to switch to another grocery store just to avoid them.
I was thinking about this, and they did live in a small town. So just imagine that maybe they did see Jeremy, right? Sure. And if you're the mom and you're manipulating your kids, you could be like, oh no, I'm so scared. Oh, Jeremy's coming. Like, she could be painting all of this, you know? And isn't it convenient that it sounds familiar? Because wasn't Michael the one? You know, he's been buried 3 feet under the concrete patio, but somehow he's still stalking her. He's breaking into their home. She's telling her friends that this is happening. All the while, we know that cannot be true. And I can't wait to read the comments because you're all smart. You're all insightful. You always have things that I didn't even think of. But it was really sad listening to this child. She's still a child. I mean, she's a teenager now, saying what it was like growing up in this household. She felt the need to protect her mother, that she had to step in between her parents because she believed that Lori was the victim. She remembered that her father, in her words, this is what she said, put something in her mother's drink, you know, like a concoction of some kind to make her fall asleep on the couch. And wanting to keep her mom safe, she would place her favorite stuffed animal, Lammy, next to her mom. That was sad, believing in her childlike imagination that it would protect her. Isabel actually broke down in tears when she was remembering these traumatic events. And it truly is a heartbreaking story. I do believe that this girl experienced that trauma. I think that it might have been that this was a volatile relationship and a toxic one. And she could also have been brainwashed by her mom to think it was even worse. But I also want to be reasonable and logical, so let's break it down. How would a 6 or 7-year-old understand that her father was essentially putting a substance in her mother's drink? You know, her mom would have had to explain what that is. If you just saw your dad putting, I'm just saying, I don't think a 6 or 7-year-old would be like, that's a drug, you know? I don't think that that's obviously going to pop up in her head. She would have to have been told that. And then there's another thing. Wouldn't the mom notice?
You would think.
But Isabel claimed that she saw him secretly stirring something into the drinks. So why wouldn't you go tell your mom? Like, if you thought that was bad, why wouldn't you say, Mommy, he just put something in your drink?
Of course you would, especially if it's your best friend. Usually a child doesn't know what poison is unless they experience it or somebody tells them about it.
Exactly. Somebody like Lori. And why would Lori keep accepting drinks from a man that she supposedly believed was giving her, you know, a substance that could do her harm? Remember, the only documented incidents of violence in this home was in 2014. There were no other 911 calls, no documented trauma, no photos, and nothing. The only testimony about violence before Isabel took the stand came from Michael's friends and coworkers who said that Lori was the aggressor in the relationship.
And there was another issue with Isabel's testimony, a major discrepancy between what she said during direct examination and cross-examination. At first, she made it sound like Jeremy fired the fatal shot. But under cross-examination, when the prosecution pressed her, she had to adjust her story to match what she had said earlier that year in her deposition, that she believed she was the one who pulled the trigger and delivered the fatal shot.
It sounds like it's unraveling at this point. Let's listen.
It's fair to say that you don't want anything bad to happen to your mom, correct?
Correct.
You don't know what grade you were in when that happened, right?
I don't.
Okay. You don't know who your teacher was when this happened, correct?
Correct.
You don't know what month this happened in, correct?
Correct.
You don't know what year this happened in, correct?
Yes.
You can't think of any holidays that this event was near, correct?
Not necessarily holidays, but like birthdays. I know it was, I'm pretty sure it was after my brother's birthday. I would say probably spring, summer-ish.
Okay. And previously you had said you thought it was spring or summer because you had recently been to the beach.
Yes.
Okay. And so that's in keeping with your brother's birthday?
Yes, his birthday's April 1st.
And when you say spring or summer, what do you mean by that?
Like, I mean, anywhere between spring or summer. I mean, that was so long ago.
I understand. Let me try to ask a better question. I may think spring starts in March. Mm-hmm. You may think spring starts in May. So when you say spring, what months are we talking about here when you're saying spring or summer?
Probably starting in like April, May.
Okay.
I feel like that's when like the school year ends is like May, so like that'd be almost summer.
Okay. And when would summer end to you?
August, September.
So this event that led to you getting a gun, shooting at your father, having him eventually killed in front of you, and then being threatened, having your life threatened. The best you can come up with as far as when this happened is sometime in some year between April and August.
Yes.
All right. The day that this happened, the events that you have described all happened in between the time frame that you woke up and went to school that day, correct?
Correct.
And that would be from 7 o'clock in the morning till about 8 o'clock in the morning, correct?
Yeah.
And what you are saying happened is your father showed up unannounced sometime in that time frame, correct?
Correct.
You're saying that he hadn't lived there since 2004, since about August of 2014. When was the last time that you had seen him prior to him showing up and having this confrontation with your mother?
Last time I saw him, I don't remember the exact day or anything. I mean, I remember like certain memories because they weren't good days. Like they, had bad events happen on those days. Because, I mean, like I said, this was so long ago, so I don't remember just like, days. I just remember like those bad events that took place.
Isabel believed it had only been a few months since she had last seen her father before the day she allegedly killed him. But when questioned, she struggled to explain why her memory of that day had suddenly become so much clearer than it was during her earlier deposition. I told you, memories don't usually get better. If anything, memories fade over time. So how is she now able to recall things that she couldn't before? And how can she recall details of what happened but nothing else?
So you take your mom's other pink and black gun, and from about 5 to 10 feet away, you shoot him.
Correct.
And you shoot him in the back of the head.
I think so, yes.
Okay. Do you ever remember saying that you shot him in the back of the head?
Yes.
Okay. So previously, before today, you definitively said, I shot him in the back of the head, correct?
Correct.
But that's changed now.
I mean, no, not necessarily. Like, I shot him in the back of the head. I don't know where the bullet went, but that's where I was aiming. That's where I'm pretty sure it hit.
Okay. You hit him.
Yes, I think, yes.
Okay. And when you hit him, today you said he just sat there, correct?
Yeah, he sat there and he's like shaked.
Okay. I want to make sure that was clear because you didn't say that on direct. He was almost like seizing, correct?
Yeah.
All right. He didn't get up, he didn't move, he didn't try to run.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so clearly you hit him.
Yeah.
All right. And then, pretty much simultaneously to you shooting your dad in the back of the head, you're saying Jeremy just happened to show up.
Like I said, he came there every single morning before school. This was right before school. We already had our clothes on. We were in the middle of eating. Like, we were about to leave for school. Like, he was there. He came before school.
He would come to your house every day before school so that your mom could then take you to school?
I mean, he would come with us. They would hang out. His son went to school there.
Okay. Now, after he arrives, while your dad is shaking and as you described, basically seizing in the chair, at this point, the amount of pressure he's putting on your mom's head has released. Is she able to get up?
She crawls away. She doesn't stand up immediately.
Okay. But you're saying Mr. Townsend came over and took your mom's other pink and black gun from you.
The same one I had, yes.
Yep. And shot him again.
Yes.
Where?
In the head.
Forensically, this just doesn't add up. Michael wasn't shot multiple times in the head, he was shot once directly in the back of the skull, and the bullet never exited. The medical examiner even testified that a bullet can enter at different angles depending on movement, but Michael's wound told a very specific story. The bullet went in straight with no angle, creating a clean entry hole. That suggests he wasn't moving. He wasn't standing over Lori or sitting across from her while holding her down with his foot like Isabel claimed.
He was still, likely asleep, and someone shot him execution style. But none of that stopped Isabel from doing everything in her power to protect her mother. And really, who could blame her? It's her own mother.
And then Lori took the stand.
Of course she did.
Tears, she told the jury that she loved Michael but described their home as tense and abusive. She said they had known each other since kindergarten and started dating in 7th grade.
According to Lori, her school was so small, fewer than 20 kids in their graduating class, that her and Michael kind of just ended up together. It's like she had no choice but to be with him. She even painted a picture of a lonely childhood, claiming she wasn't one of the popular kids because she had a special needs brother who was bullied. She even broke down while telling the jury what she seemed to think was a tragic story about why she never got a chance to be homecoming queen. I mean, cry me a damn river. Your husband was murdered. I actually was able to pull up their pictures from, I think, 2nd grade or 1st grade. Yeah, I found their yearbook. And I thought, well, I'll just show it here. This is Lori. They were both in 2nd grade at the time. I mean, yes, they had a small school, but saying that, you know, you'll hear the rest. Let Lori tell you.
End up being together.
Yeah, you just end up being like, oh gosh, there was no other men on the entire planet.
She described Michael as an awkward troublemaker, and according to her, they only ended up together because neither of them had any better options.
That's pathetic.
Her parents even helped him get his pilot's license so he could support her, but she was still bitter that his family never helped them financially when they were starting out.
The way she explained this, you could tell she was still holding a grudge, and it even made you not like her because you're listening, you're like,
really?
Is she really talking about the victim in this case and saying like, oh, I had no better options and his family didn't support us? It's like, they don't have to. Y'all are adults. She wanted so much sympathy. She explained that when they moved to Florida, Michael commuted between Florida and New York for a while, and she described feeling like a single mom with no friends, no family, and no support system. She claimed that when Isabel was a year old, she moved back to New York with the intention of leaving Michael. Then, in one of the more dramatic parts of her testimony, Lori said that when she stepped outside her mother's house one day, Michael greeted her with a punch to the face. And that alleged attack, she said, was enough to convince her to move back to Florida with him just 3 weeks later. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, wouldn't someone punching you in the face do the opposite? Wouldn't you be like, oh, no, you go to Florida. I'm going to stay here with my family. And there's also no evidence that any of this happened. There's no police reports, no hospital records, right? It's just her word. And you know how good that is. She claimed that she had so much bruising that she had to miss work for 3 weeks, yet there wasn't a single record of that. Lori also described Isabel as a parentified child, meaning that she had to grow up too fast and care for her younger brother because Michael always hurt Lori. Then she painted herself as a victim of ultimate control, extreme control, that he would tell her like, oh, you can't eat that. You can't eat this. You can't eat that. But this is funny because she's saying that this gave her a complex where she became really thin. But didn't she say when she got the personal trainer that he would call her fat?
Right.
But I guess that's why he was like, oh, don't eat this, don't eat that. I don't believe it. He didn't want her to gain weight, supposedly. And she recalled a dramatic moment when she tried to eat an Oreo and was allegedly thrown off the couch. But why do I feel like this is what she did to him? Like, why do I feel like she's flipping the script and that he didn't do that to her?
Because it sounds made up.
It does sound made up, but it doesn't sound made up for a psycho like her who gets a tattoo of you know what down there. She claimed that Michael quit his commercial pilot job and started working at Disney because he didn't want to leave her alone for long periods of time without him. According to her, she tried to leave him on 8 different occasions, but he always convinced her to stay for the sake of their children. But we know it was Lori who tried to do the convincing. She was the one harassing his girlfriend, threatening to harm her if she didn't let her man come back home, calling her a homewrecker. Remember that? She even said she never met Jeremy at the park. It was at the child's school where his wife Vanessa was a teacher. And she didn't want to look like the bad person. She was like, I thought they were separated. I only realized he was married after we got together. And she even further wanted to justify like being with a married man, that she was like, oh, well, I only started dating him because he saw the bruises on my face. He gave me a note with his phone number on it. And he's like, I can protect you from your husband. I mean, this sounds like one of those stories like you read like a romance novel, like an evil one. The problem with all of this, none of it explained why Michael was buried under her patio with a bullet in his skull.
Right.
I mean, it was a sob story.
Yeah.
None of it is explaining anything unless you want to take all that and assume, okay, you're crazy. And that's why this all happened.
Did Mr. Townsend make any representations to you that he would protect you from Michael?
Yes, from the very beginning.
Okay.
He told me if I ever needed anything that I could contact him. And he was always on top of it. If Becca and I went out dancing in the evening, he would come over. He would see me before we went out. And while we were out, he would call. And we would have to send him a picture to show him that we were there where we were. And when I left, I would have to let him know that I was on my way home. And then also let him know that I had gotten home. He knew everything. He had everything. He kept track of me every step of the way.
Okay.
I mean, some of this sounds like it could be true. A boyfriend that cares. He thinks you're in danger because of what she told him, though. Sure, I can see him saying, if you need anything, let him know, but not murdering her husband. Lori also told the jury that after the 2014 incident, DCF got involved with their family and only allowed her to keep the kids if Michael moved out. She flat out denied ever letting him move back into that house in the summer of 2015 after scaring his girlfriend Kendall away, even though when he disappeared later that year, his truck, his wallet, all of his belongings were in the house.
Then came another wild claim. Lori told the jury that Michael was such a danger to them that DCF, Department of Children and Families, allegedly offered to change their names, giving them new social security numbers and relocate them somewhere safe. But there was a problem with that. There was absolutely no record of DCF ever making that offer. She said she turned it down because Isabel loved her school, and the kids felt settled. However, considering that all the charges against Michael were dropped, that whole story doesn't add up.
And since when does DCF secretly relocate parents into like a witness protection program?
I don't know.
In all these accounts, like I said before, Lori and Isabel are claiming the killing didn't happen in November of 2015. No. They shifted the entire timeline, saying it all happened in May of 2016 when, wait for it, Michael found out she was pregnant with Jeremy's baby. I'm sorry, but I can't even keep up with this. So if people that are watching are like, what? It's not our fault. We're doing our best. But listen closely to Lori's account of that fateful day that her daughter already told the jury about. And try not to get sucked in to her trying to sound like a saint who rescues and cares for innocent little animals.
I got up got my coffee, and then that's when I noticed he was sitting out on the back patio. We had 2 tables. There was like one long one, and then there was a smaller round table with 2 chairs. I seen him sitting there. So I got the kids. I don't remember if it was Pop-Tarts, breakfast bars, whatever. They're Ovaltine. They always had Ovaltine. They had tables in their bedrooms. I went in and got them their clothes, gave them their breakfast, turned on the TV, and I just said, eat your breakfast, get ready for school, which they did. Just like every other morning, I'm going to go out and take care of the animals. We had over 400 birds. We had pigs. I rescued a horse. There was lots of animals on the property.
Okay.
So that was not unnormal for me to go outside while they were inside getting ready. So I went out there, but I knew he was sitting out there. I could see him through the kitchen window out in the back patio. So I went out there, and we started talking, and it escalated. And I went to walk back in because this wasn't going anywhere, and he was not leaving. And I opened the sliding glass door to go in. And when I did that, he took my phone and slammed it up against the sliding glass door. There was an imprint of my phone on that sliding glass door. He grabbed my arm, pulled me down into his lap in the furthest chair that was, I don't have a picture in front of me, but the sliding glass door, there was like a post, and there was we had like a bistro table sitting there in front, and on this further side, I guess, in front of the sliding glass door, there was a chair. So he had pulled me down in his lap. He was holding on to me. And at that point, I was just trying to convince him, like, okay. Enough. We'll work it out.
What's he saying to you during this, Lori?
I was talking at that point. I was scared. That's why I'm saying, okay, we can work it out, because that's what I did every single time, because I was scared. And he told me not this time.
Was he upset about anything in particular that you're aware of?
Yes, he found out I had gotten pregnant.
From Jay?
Yes.
She calls Jeremy Jay, but there you have it. She said she's pregnant in May of 2016, a month after Jeremy ended it. And Michael isn't living there. He didn't even enter the house, but he sat on the patio. So she's saying, like, he came around back, secretly sat on his patio, because I'm assuming both of them own the house, even though I guess she had the restraining order, but then it was dropped. I'm not really sure. But she was caught off guard. No one had seen this man since November of 2015, but she wants you to believe he was right there in May of 2016 to confront her about being pregnant by another man. She wants you to believe at the same time that Michael doesn't even care about her enough to work things out, to pay child support, to even see his kids. Why would he give an F if she was pregnant with Jeremy? I mean, and how would he even know that?
Right.
Well, he couldn't because
He was dead.
Right. According to the medical examiner, he was already deceased. So I can't believe this woman expects anyone to believe this, that he was kicking her in the stomach to harm an unborn child, painting him as this terrible, inhumane person. Oh, and the reason she has to change the timeline to 2016 is because it sounds more believable if Jeremy had been in her life longer than a month. Because killing her husband for her right after they met, that probably isn't as likely, right? So let's go back and listen.
Okay. So, is he mentioning that in his discussion or what?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, not at that time. We had, it was previously before he pulled me into his lap, but I mean, he knew.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, we'll work it out. Because at that point, I had already had the abortion.
Okay. So, are you facing the house or facing away from the house? Tell us your direction.
I'm facing looking out the back pasture. I'm on the back porch, but I'm not looking into the house.
Okay. Now, he spins you around and you're in the chair, I take it?
I'm in his lap. He's holding me there.
Okay.
And then he pushed me to the ground.
Okay. As he pushes you to the ground, does he do anything?
After he pushed me to the ground, he was kicking me in the stomach.
Okay. Presuming you were pregnant or something?
Yeah, and I had already told him I had the abortion, and I was screaming at that point.
Okay. Is he making any threats to do any harm to you, any serious bodily harm?
Yeah, I mean, he said not this time. He said I was not getting away.
Okay.
Not this time. I mean, we had been through so many events, but that's not the first time. I mean, he had pulled a gun out me at Publix in Claremont. This was not the first time.
Let's not talk about prior events. Okay? Yeah, I'm sorry. So you're on the ground, and he's kicking you.
In the stomach.
Okay. Is he kicking you hard?
Yes.
Okay.
Very hard.
Is he making any... Okay. Is he making any statements of any intent to kill you or anything of that nature?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Is he speaking in such a level that the children could hear this?
Oh, yeah. We both were.
Okay.
I was screaming.
Okay. As he's doing this, and he's not relenting on it, did he have his foot anywhere?
Well, that went on for a few minutes, and then he put his face or his foot on my face,
Okay,
smashing it into the patio, porch,
okay.
whatever you want to call it.
As he has his foot on your face, is it on the front of your face, the side of your face?
I was facing him. Now I'm curled up facing the house. And it was just like this.
Is he continue to yell? Is he yelling at you?
Not at that point. Nope.
Okay.
No. We were sitting there and I could not yell anymore.
We heard
He's
from...
just sitting in the chair as he's smashing my face into the porch.
What's the next thing you recall?
The next thing I see is I can't even say that I've seen her. I more or less heard it, and then I think I've seen her.
When you say her, who are you referring to?
Isabel.
Isabel? What's Isabel do?
She had fired a gunshot.
Okay. Now, when Isabel fires this gunshot, do you see where it lodged into Michael or what?
I could not.
Where are you after Isabel fires the gun?
Still on the ground. And Michael.
The next thing you recall?
The next thing I recall is seeing Jeremy, and hearing the gunshot at essentially the same time.
Is there much time that goes by between Isabel shooting the gun and Jay taking over, Jeremy?
No.
I have to say, this woman can really put on a show. I think she actually missed her calling in showbiz. And anyone can become a great liar when their life is on the line. Of course, we know what happened next. Lori claimed that Jeremy told her to take the kids to school, reassuring her that he would take care of everything. And according to her, he also made it clear that if anyone said anything, Isabel would be taken away, and he wouldn't take the blame for anything. Lori said she did what she always did whenever there was a fight with Michael. She took the kids and left. She figured the safest place for them was at school, and then she could hurry back to see what Jeremy had planned for Michael's body. But when she got home, both Michael and Jeremy, they were gone. Jeremy told her he lived on 30 acres, and she assumed he had buried Michael on his own property, not hers. But I was thinking, there wouldn't be any evidence right in her own backyard that a hole was dug or something happened. Like, she's out in there doing yard work that same weekend. She's out and about with her animals in the yard. You wouldn't be like, disturbed earth.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Later that day, when the kids got home from school, she said she told them their father was going to jail and they wouldn't see him for a very long time.
Wait a minute. That really doesn't add up. Weren't they there when he was killed that morning? Because I'm confused. Like, you say she rehearsed it, but it's like there's so many holes in the story. But she insisted she had no idea that Jeremy had buried Michael in her own backyard and that it was just a complete coincidence that she had her new boyfriend Travis build a patio right over the exact spot where Michael was buried. Like, they couldn't put the patio anywhere on the acres of land. They put it right there. And her excuse was that, I would have never carved mine and Travis's initials into that concrete if I knew that. Because apparently that's the kind of detail that would have made a difference.
Right.
I think it's just like a creepy attempt not to look like the monster that this woman really is. I know it's hard for us to believe that somebody that looks normal, like the soccer mom bringing her kids to school, we don't want to think that we'll be walking around and we could be hanging out, working with someone who could do this.
Right, totally. Lori also denied ever posting anything from Michael's Facebook account. Instead, she tried to shift suspicion onto others, saying that anyone who had ever been in her house, including Jeremy, knew the password and could have been the one messaging Michael's friends and family.
Why would you know the password to Michael's Facebook?
Maybe it's like saved, auto
Oh,
login.
a lot of people do have that.
She wrapped up her testimony by claiming that she was just too scared of everyone and everything to call the police. And with that, the defense rested their case.
I have to say, what do you think of all that? I mean, that was a lot.
It's a lot. Usually liars put in all the details.
That's true. What do you think about her taking the stand? I think that was a mistake.
She thought she could win it over with the jury.
Don't they always?
Well, that's why she took the stand.
I was not surprised because this woman is used to being able to control and manipulate whoever she wants in her life. When she couldn't control Michael anymore, she had enough. He had seen her real self, the real Lori. Her mask had come down. They had been married for a while, and she didn't want him to live with that knowledge. In the final moments of Lori Shaver's trial, the courtroom was thick with tension and both sides were making their closing arguments. Assistant State Attorney Nicholas Kimbyrleigha took the floor first. He methodically pieced together the events leading to Michael Shaver's death, and he zeroed in on the deception, the way that Lori kept up this illusion that Michael was still alive through fake messages and manipulation. He urged the jury to focus on the physical evidence, the lies, the cover-ups, and the undeniable pattern of deceit, arguing that they all pointed to one conclusion. Lori Shaver was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Most importantly, Michael had only been shot in the head one time.
The defense, led by Jeffrey Wiggs, took a different approach, throwing out alternative theories left and right. He suggested that Lori's then-boyfriend, Jeremy Townsend, or even her younger daughter, Isabel, could have been responsible for Michael's death. He argued that since there was no direct evidence linking Lori to the crime, the jury had to assume reasonable doubt existed, and that was all they needed to find her not guilty. According to him, the prosecution's entire case was built on speculation, and speculation wasn't enough for conviction.
But thankfully, the jury wasn't buying it. After just 4 hours of deliberation, they returned with their verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. On November 26 of 2024, Lori Shaver was sentenced to life in prison, bringing a long overdue justice for Michael Shaver's family and his friends. It took years to uncover the truth, but in the end, they did get justice. Although we know not only was it delay, but it's never truly justice. And I just had to feel the most sadness for these poor children, 2 of which were under the age of 5 at the time that she went to prison. I mean, that is very sad. And her older kids, they lost their father and their mother. The investigators said that Facebook helped them solve this murder, and it really did. And they do say that it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. You know, you could get away with the crime, but you got to be really good at covering your tracks, and most people are not. I've heard that in many cases. The digital evidence doesn't lie like a human does, even a young human trying to protect her own mother.
When everything was said and done, his family had the same question all of us are probably asking. Why didn't Lori just get a divorce?
Yeah, Michael's dad said she could have just walked away, left Michael alone. But no, she had to go to the extreme. And I think she truly wanted to live in a world where no one had ever seen who she really was. As she said, Michael had known her since kindergarten. Her caring, loving, animal lover, devoted mother persona was blemished as long as Michael existed. So for her to live the life blemish-free, she had to take his. That's my take. But I do wonder why people just don't get a divorce, because
That's what I was saying. Like, who cares? You could still live your private life. Just leave me out of it.
Yeah, because, you know, in all of our past relationships, I think we can say like we weren't the best people to that person. You know, it didn't work out. That's why it's over.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so that person can have a bad perspective of you, but who cares? Years go by and no one's going to even remember that.
Most people move on with their own life.
But I'm just curious if anyone that's watching can understand why someone chooses to risk losing their own freedom, losing their life. Is it the cockiness? Like, oh, I can get away with this. Like, whose brain actually thinks that way?
I think it could be one of a few things, right? Cockiness, sure, and heat of the moment. It's not heat of passion. It's like, I'm pissed right now. Like, whoops. Well, you still can't call that heat of passion, you know?
Right. Because it can't be in this case because, like, he was digging the pond and it's pretty obvious that was never going to be a pond for the ducks. But yeah, I just tend to wonder in so many cases, like Scott Peterson and Chris Watts, why don't you just get a divorce? And a lot of it's financial. Oh, I don't want to pay your child support and alimony for this many years. But that's worth your freedom if you get caught?
No.
And all these elaborate plans, like, I'm going more on like the Scott Peterson thing, but it's like you buy a boat. I mean, some people might not even think he's guilty. We'll have to have a talk outside later alone. But you go through all that trouble, which would have costed you money anyway.
To try to get away.
Is it communication? Like, can people not communicate anymore?
It's communication and lying to yourself, not being honest with your true values and beliefs and what you truly want.
Like, if Lori didn't want to be ending up with her kindergarten boyfriend, then why did you? You know, it's like, is it the expectations and you're so afraid to upset people? Like, I had a friend who went through with her wedding when the night before, and even at her bachelorette party, she told us she didn't want to get married. So I was like,
yeah,
then why don't you?
Why didn't you do it?
What? Like, well, it's already paid for. But then it's like,
see, these are those answers, right? Because I already did the thing to get me there. Might as well just do it.
What do they
and not
call
thinking
that?
about the future. It's not being futuristic.
No. There's like sunk cost. It's like the sunk cost effect. It's like you already invested all this money, so you have to justify. So they call it.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably
cut your losses is what they should be thinking.
Yeah, just cut your losses. Yes, it sucks, but
cut your losses because it's going to get worse in the future if you don't. If you don't keep all the baggage and the dead weight.
To be fair, there are horror stories that I read. I'm always on like subreddits about relationships and things like that. And there are horror stories about getting divorced and the ex is crazy. Like won't let you, plays the pawn with the children, won't leave you alone, ruining all your relationships. And you feel like fire is like coming out of your ears because they won't stop. So, what do you do, right? And I guess those are the situations where a lot of people just live with it. They hope that the person will change. They hope that the person will meet someone and get on with their life.
Right. It's a terrible experience for anyone having an abuser forcing someone to have to move or like leave. It's like, well, I was fine here until I met you, but y'all are both there to begin with, right? So who really... Just be nice to one another, seriously.
We've hung out with you a little longer than usual and given you more of our thoughts than we usually do, but I think this just struck a chord with me specifically, and even with you, having children, being parents, being married, but we're not the illogical person. We're not murderous minds, So that's probably why we can't wrap our brain around it. But we'd love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments. We'll see you in our next video. Bye.